So we continue our privacy engineer conference, and we welcome Monica Posada, who is project manager of the API study and senior researcher at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. Hello, how are you, Monica? Oh, I think you are muted.
I am. That's
Yeah,
the most
we hear you.
common sentence you heard in these days. Yeah, sorry about it. Thanks. I was just thanking you for inviting me to this track because it links very well with some of the activities that we are doing in the API.
Great. So you're going to speak about a study you've done on more than 4,000 terms of services of
Yes.
APIs. So I give you the mic and we listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Monica Posada. I work for the European Commission, the Joint Research Center in particular. For those who doesn't know, the Joint Research Center is the European Commission knowledge service that it aims to support policy making by providing scientific advice. In particular, I work for the Digital Economy Unit that investigates how the information and communication technologies affect the economy and the digital transformation of government. And more in detail, I'm working on a study which is called API for IPS, APIs for the Innovative Public Services. And the study aims to analyze strategic essentials for the adoption of APIs for the innovation of public sector, looking at the same time to the three pillars: the technical, the legal, and the organizational. And why do we do that? Because API is being the connecting nodes of all the systems of systems. So most of the time, every single actor connects to other actor in the digital sphere through an API. And therefore, APIs are technical enablers to achieve some of the goals of the European digital strategy. I'm only going to mention three of them. The European data strategy, on which APIs are an enabler of data access, supply, and its control. The European industrial strategy, on which APIs are the enabler of cross-fertilization between and within sectors. And this also includes the small and medium enterprise, and entrepreneurs make a very good, play a very good role in this aspect. And then it also underpins the European strategy for the artificial intelligence as enabler. So APIs here make a role on the accessing of algorithms to data for the training and also for the observation on what they do. So I'm going to talk today about, so in our project, we have, as I mentioned at the beginning, three pillars. So one is the technical, on which we analyzed how to best manage APIs, not only individually, but as coordinated effort for an organization. We looked at how to improve discoverability so that our APIs that are facing external world are used and uptaken, how to ensure the security of the infrastructures, because of course APIs are door to our digital premises, and therefore it needs to be assessed. But this time I'm only going to talk about both the legal and the organizational pillars. So we've done an analysis, as Jules was mentioning at the beginning, who is a legal empirics analysis. What does this mean? So we've got a bunch of more than 4,000 links to terms of services documents. And we try to analyze whether we can estimate whether there is real coordination in digital ecosystems by analyzing the content of these documents. So what we do is actually try to understand what is there. And we do it from a perspective of a systemic perspective. So what we expect is that what we find is means to ensure the robustness of digital infrastructures, of digital tissue, so to say. In particular, we look at the legal stability. For that, we get these 4,000 terms of services, and we compare them. We try to understand whether there is homogeneity in the definition of these documents, which in the end are contracts, and whether these practices, the practices that are encoded in these documents are first compliant with the governing laws, and then if they are fostering or hindering the cooperation and or fair competition among the digital actors. So this is a very important slide. The terms of services are a unilateral legal offer that API providers like you are given to whatever consumer of your API or of your service gets. Whenever someone uses your API, they are by default accepting the terms of service and therefore adhering to the contract by default. Our methodology was to get these over 4,000 documents, terms of service documents from Programmable Web, with whom we collaborated in 2019. From this amount of terms of services, we managed to download successfully over 2,800 documents. And we used very well-known natural language processing techniques to analyze both the structure and the conditions that are described in these documents. So first of all, we analyzed the homogeneity of the terms of services, and we did it looking at three aspects. It's a structure, whether they are specific to the API or are more related to the digital change on which they are embedded. And then we did an analysis and a comparison between normal API providers and the big players like Google, Twitter, Twilio, and so on and so forth. So regarding the structure, we found structural commonalities among the documents, quite well established. So the clauses that we identify in those documents were more or less always the same. And you can see some of these clauses listed here. It's like contracting parties, the start of the contract, the termination conditions, the payments, the governing law, liabilities, indemnifications, warranties, privacy, separability, and so on and so forth. Regarding the API specificity, what we looked for was the number of mentions of APIs in these terms of services. And we found that 40% of these APIs, of these terms of services, did not mention one time and did not mention API. This was surprising for us because the data set, so Programmable Web is an API provider repository that is self-declared by the API providers. So we couldn't understand how was that possible that the terms of service were not specific. So we dig a little bit on it, and we then understood that most of these terms of services, even if it were somehow related to the API, they were more related to the application, the single application for what they were used. So instead of being used as an access point for multiple potential applications. And this brought us to the conclusion, are people missing the opportunities on using their APIs? Are people missing, people lacking a systemic vision on the services that they are providing? And this is a reflection that we have to still continue and make some narrative on top of it. But I leave the floor for you as API providers to think about it. To continue with this analysis, we said, okay, let's try to look at the big providers and see what they do. And yeah, actually what they do is actually have a multi-layered terms of service that typically contain terms of service specific for horizontal API service, such as authentication, and then terms of service specific to the functionality that they are providing through APIs, such as Google Maps, Google Ads, and so on and so forth. So yeah, in there, we found a little bit of difference between different types of providers. Then we analyzed the compliance with governing laws, and this is getting closer to the topic of this track, which is privacy. So we were able to identify 111 legal documents worldwide. These legal documents mentioned in these terms of services. These legal documents contain acts, regulation, directives, ordinances, decrees, and so on and so forth. Most of them were defined and enacted in the late 90s, and yeah, most of them after the 2000s. What was a little bit surprising for us was that even given that the programmable web has more API providers from the US, still in what regards world governing laws, we've found that there are much more European laws mentioned in the terms of service, like 60% of the documents identified, of the law documents identified, come from the European, Middle East, and Africa. And mostly from European legislation. Obviously, what was not surprising is that even though there are less USA legal documents, they were mentioned more times in more documents. But the most cited regulation that was identified with a higher number of hits in terms of services were the General Data Protection Regulation of the European, which is this dot down here, the yellow one. There were also mentioned two self-regulatory actions such as standards, code of conduct, and code of practices. The governing laws category, and here we have the privacy. So almost 1/4 of all the documents that were, all the legal documents that were mentioned in the terms of services are related to privacy. There are also related to digital governance, other digital governance topics such as ICT regulation, intellectual property, and contract consumer protection. We also have mentions to sector-specific regulations such as the environment, health, finance, and tax, export and trade, and anti-fraud laws. Regarding the privacy and data subject rights, we identified 25 law entries that were related to privacy. They came from certain different areas, from the regional perspective to the national scope to plurinational European. And as I said, the European one, the GDPR, was the most mentioned. Some of them, by the way, we found that some of them are amended or substituted, but is still present in the terms of services. So one thing to be said to the legal teams of the companies is that it's good to review how I mean to eliminate these dimensions to not existing law, because that will make a little bit heavier to understand the terms of services. We even got to the granularity to identify what were the articles of the GDPR that were mentioned. And you have all the list here. All these articles are mentioned then. So I understand that these guys working on the engineering of the privacy have a lot of work to do in this area. And actually these findings that we've got confirm in a way that this privacy trend is coming up in the market. But related to the data subjects rights, we did a little bit of a deep dive on what were the most common topics included. And of course, it was data portability, privacy protection, the erasure of digital of private data, the right to be forgotten, some rectification aspects, and the restriction on data processing, which is a very interesting stuff for the people who is working on those topics. We also did some study of the jurisdiction. So we are trying to understand whether the jurisdiction clauses are a legal barrier for innovation. So what you see in this map are the places that are mentioned in the jurisdiction clauses for the courts where you have to go to dispute settlement. This might be a barrier because if you are a Spanish person developing an application using a US API, and the code that you have to use if you have any problem is in California, then you might say, I cannot take the risk to get in troubles with these moguls and so on. We also did an analysis of the cooperation and our fair competition. If we could understand what were the dynamics there, we look at three aspects: transparency, the termination conditions, and liability or warranties that are described in the terms of services. Regarding the transparency, so we try to understand how difficult it is to process and understand the terms of service contract by a human being, and there is no surprise there. Legal documents are yet in 2019 very difficult to read. In most of, in 80% of the cases, definitions were absent. The sentence word count were very long and therefore very difficult to be processed by a human being. And the readability score were not good at all. So platform and the European regulation for platform to business regulation, it's already going in the direction that is asking players to try to improve that, trying to make these terms easy to read, to not get to not hinder the possibility to embark in new ventures. Regarding the termination conditions, we try to understand by checking the termination condition clauses whether there was an interesting what was the fairness of these termination conditions, and we were struck by the fact that 35.7% of the documents analyzed declared unbalanced termination conditions. So meaning that they say that they could stop the service that they are providing anytime without any responsibility. If these APIs, if these terms of services are API specific, they might have potential discontinuities in data value chains. And this, of course, generates an uncertainty on the viability and continuity of services and discourage innovation. And on the same vein, we did the analysis on liability and warranties, and we got some of the numbers that you see there. We are doing more work. We are going a little bit in deep on these aspects, and we will have soon in Q1 2022 a new publication. And I think I will stop here, and I think that's my time run already. So
Yes, thank you very much. We have we have 4 minutes left, so we can answer some of the question in the chat. So first, thank you very much for your very clear and interesting presentation. And so we have a question from François Xavier. He asks, do you think APIs deserves a specific regulation in Europe, like an APIs Act regulation, or a contractual practices seems to be reliable enough so that we should let the lawyer develop a set of recurrent practices?
Well, it is very difficult to say that APIs on themselves deserve regulation, because it's a technology, and we know that technologies evolve so quick. Typically, legislation goes or policy instruments are made a little bit with a higher scope, but there is a lot of policy instruments that can be done and that can be used rather than regulating to enforce the use of good practices on APIs, and to understand that APIs can be used for monitoring the implementation of data regulation, and those, I mean, the policy definition, policy instruments are not only regulation. There are a wide range of things that can be done, and the fact that APIs will play an important role there, it's clear to me. On the data strategy, it's clear to me, and actually, in fact, it's already happening. So there are some documents that already speak about it explicitly, and others that do not explicitly talk about it, but implicitly talk about APIs as interfaces, as connecting dots, as in the payment service directive.
Okay, and we have time only for one more question. So now that you have done this study on 4,000 term of services, do you plan to also make a study on how these term of services are applied? Does this term of services are applied in reality, or are they just declarative things that doesn't reflect the reality of the implementation of the APIs?
Yeah, I like I mean, actually, there was another question the other day suggesting us to try to look into court cases. So there might be some evolution in that direction. It's an interesting, indeed, question, and it could be very interesting. At the moment, we are not doing it, but I think it is a very nice point. And it will be great to cross-check this information with the reality in the cases. So yeah, thanks for the tip.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation, the response to the questions, and I wish you a good day. I saw other questions in the chat, so if you have some 5 minutes to answer them before leaving, it will be great. So I wish you a pleasant day.
Thank you very much, and good luck with the track. Ciao.
Ciao.